Okay, well, started our meeting, so whatever you got on.
So, Mr. Mayor, council members, I know that with the last storm that we had that came through, there was kind of a lot of resident questions as to, what is the city gonna do? Are they gonna do anything in terms of storm cleanup and that sort of thing? So, wanted to bring this back before you in the work session here, just to kind of get your feedback on perhaps, directions you wanna go with this. I did reach out to City of Andover, who, they spent about $150,000 this year, in terms of setting a location aside, allowing residents to drop debris off there, bringing in a tub grinder. A tub grinder's cost anywhere from $3 to $4 a yard, or $6 to $7 a yard, probably closer to the higher amount during a storm event. And the City of Andover budgets $300,000 annually for storms. So if they don't spend that money in a given year, then that money stays in there. If they spend 100,000 of it, then the next budget cycle they backfill that 100,000. But they have $300,000 set aside as a safety fund, if you will, for, that would probably be a F5 tornado type of scenario, might cost that amount of money. So there was some discussion as to, there's a private company in the community here that you might be competing with, during a storm. There's the brush drop off at the sheriff's office, where for 2 yards is free to Anoka County residents. Generally, a storm event, you're going to have much more than 2 yards, I would think. But you could go back, the day after with another 2 yards, and the day after with another 2 yards. All that is free. That's not free, the county actually pays for it, but it's free to the resident. So the question then is, do you want to set up a curbside pickup type of scenario? Which I don't believe we have the vehicle for that. But you would need a truck with a boom, to pick this up and load it in and take it over to a spot. Or do you want more of a just a city-owned piece of property where you designate this is where storm debris can be brought? The challenge with that, of course, is that it's usually debris and refrigerators and mattresses and tires and things of that nature. So it usually grows. So that's kind of the discussion. Thankfully we're not in a storm scenario right now where we have to think real quick on it, so we have a little bit of time to come up with a solution, but it's, the question is that of resources, right? And how much you want to put towards services for the residents of East Bethel, or do you want to kind of say, in lieu of charging you taxes, it's your responsibility to clean that up? So,
Have you talked to Mike Rivard at all?
I have not.
Well, last time I passed their place on 65, they were pretty well stocked up with whatever you want to call it, broken trees and stuff. So I don't think they have a lot of room to pile it up there. What do you guys think?
Well, I don't think, we're not talking about an everyday event here. And we can still get some bad times over in, especially Coon Lake Beach, where you get a good heavy wet snow and you lose a lot of branches. You get severe drop. I got quite a few calls after that last storm went through, and then I drove through myself, and it was a tornado that went through. It wasn't just little snapped twigs. And I think there should be some way or something we can do for the residents. Whether it's, not everybody's gonna have a bobcat or a big tractor to move this stuff. And as was mentioned, you get some commercial guys, well, sorry if we're in competition, but a lot of them guys take that as an opportunity to rake people for their money. Because they know people are in need, they gotta get the stuff off, especially if it's on your roof or your power lines, and if it knocks the mast off the roof, then the power company won't come back till you hire an electrician. And not everybody's capable of doing that. So again, I don't think for the, little rainstorm, whatever, but if it's a major storm, I think we gotta work on something here help them out. Nate, what do you, how much time do you guys spend over the beach during a bad one?
The beach, yeah, has, I can go up those. Blue Lake Beach, we have a few neighborhoods with white pines in them that tend to break a lot. That's kind of the biggest issue down there. For this storm, we spent about $27,000 for these last two storms. That included only the right-of-way cleanup, public property, and what was in the roads. We had probably close to 70 locations with trees in the roads. A lot of them are the same spot from the two storms. It's going to come down to city council's direction with how much they want to spend of public money to clean up private property. I think it's going to kind of depend on the size of the storm. For locations, we do have Booster Park for a drop-off location, as Matt mentioned. We've done this in the past for some smaller storms. We end up getting a lot of other stuff in there. It's not storm damage.
Is it beat up the field too?
Well,
Or you just-
that one, and that time we did it in the parking lot. So we
Oh,
just did it on the
okay.
blacktop.
Well, do we have surveillance cameras down there, so if people were dumping other than trees, that they could be brought up on surveillance cameras, or?
We do not, no.
Sure do it.
It's tough to get good data from security cameras. We've had them here in our city hall, and
We gotta spend the money.
it's hard to identify a lot of times, but, so that's kind of our thought. It kind of depends on the size of the storm. If we had a F5 tornado, we'd probably qualify for some emergency management money. That may be a different story. We do have some resources that we can use if needed. We could use Bondi Park. It's kind of an unused large open area, grass. You could store there. You probably have to gate it off during the evenings. Just have it open during the day or something. That's an option, I guess, as in an extreme event. But for the most part, I think this one went pretty well, handling it how we did.
So Nate, what does the city do with the brush that they collect right now?
Right now, we burn it
And,
after a snow cover on a small kind of unused part of John Anderson Park.
okay,
And that's gated and locked up, so we only have access to that, so we don't get any other people dumping in there, but
so would a possibility be that we could use John Anderson as a drop-off point and have it staffed for open hours so that we ensure what comes in?
right now, it's pretty much plumb full from just what we clean from the road, so there really isn't any more room in there for anybody else to drop anything off in there.
But for future occurrences,
If it was a small storm, possibly, you'd have to have someone staff it during the day. It fills up pretty quick, and it's our whole summer dumping area, so it accumulates throughout the year. We can't burn until snow cover in the wintertime.
Mhm.
It's really not a great place to be having a public dump. If we were to dump, it'd have to probably be at Booster Park or Bondi Park. But,
and
Would it be
then,
worth our while to look into a chipper shredder?
like a tub grinder,
Alright. Sure, why not? I mean, we put a lot of that stuff in the parks.
we do have a chipper, but this stuff is all too large for that. And it's a lot of work to run it through a chipper.
I think the tub grinders are $1 million or something. if I'm
Yeah,
not
That's
if you
what
wanted to
Mike
purchase
Rivard
one, it would be,
told me it was $1 million for a tub grinder,
Yeah.
yeah.
so.
Is there any county resources to help with this? Cause it's kind of a hit and miss deal, you know, you never know what community is gonna get hit by a bad storm. Do they deal with it at the county level at all?
I'm sure they deal with it. The Parks Department would go out and clean the county right-of-ways,
That's
similar
it.
to the way we do it. They pull it back then to the parks and they'll sell wood, you know, they have an annual firewood sale. But I think there's two distinction here. There's picking up debris set up in the right-of-way or, you know, around the shoulder or whatever, versus actually pulling trees off of people's houses. I don't think that we want to get into that. You get into, you took out my sprinkler system, you know, or whatever the case may be. And, yeah, you get into liability at that point. I think that would be tree professionals that have to do that work
I agree.
and are licensed and insured and bonded for.
And it would
for
be
that kind of
covered
work.
by insurance to some extent too.
Right. But in terms of residents getting it to the, you know, to their driveway or, you know, edge of the road or whatever, then I don't know if we can rent a truck that can, you know, process this. I'm sure those are, if they are available, they're being used during those events.
Probably need a clam truck.
Yeah, so, and I don't know if we would have a need for that at some point or for other, projects, or, if there's a component that can be kind of like a roll-off that can be loaded on one, loaded off, type of thing. I don't know what the options are there, but I would say it would probably be significant dollars to purchase one of those.
Well, no matter what we do, it's gonna cost some money. And, we sit up here and we, oh yeah, we represent the residents and we're here to help them and do whatever. I didn't expect us to go in there and take stuff off their roofs. What I would like to see is if they could have somebody get it down or get it into a pile where we could do some kind of a mass pickup. Well, if we don't, then they're just not gonna be able to get through their roads, that's all.
An example from Coon Lake anyway is that there's containers are dropped off for, the weeds.
Well, it used to be. They quit doing that, what, 10 years ago?
Probably 5 years ago.
Well, there was just one there earlier this year. I don't know whose it was, if it wasn't
We
East
do at
Bethel's, it was
it's at
somebody
the
else.
recycle center now, there's still a location for aquatic weeds.
Yeah,
The problem with that one was, it was filled with garbage all the time.
yeah. Okay,
So a roll-off was dropped off and people
used-
fill it?
They used to be able to put like, it was for Eurasian water milfoil was the idea, yep, but over time it ended up being a lot of yard waste and a lot of garbage was kind of the biggest thing in there. Just an open dumpster.
Anybody else got any thoughts about this topic?
Yeah, I think we all agree that we have to have some sort of a plan in place to help out the residents when we have a situation like this, whether it be we talk to the business down on 65. I've seen him where he's full and I've seen him where he's not. Maybe he mulches. I don't know if anybody's reached out. Is that Mike or Mark?
Mike Rivard.
Mark Rivard. I don't know if
Rivard
anybody's talked to him
Companies.
yet.
We talked to them about pricing on bringing stuff there,
And what about picking up?
not about picking anything up, no.
Okay.
We were talking about getting rid of our stuff, what it would cost to get rid of ours rather than burning it, but it's too expensive.
That's kind of
Okay.
funny, cause they sell this stuff.
Yeah, I thought they mulched up their branches and stuff down there.
Pay to drop it off and then you pay to pick up the mulch.
Well, I mean, we could approach him because of, what happens if it's a freak, storm like this too. He might be willing to. You don't know till we ask him, right? And I can go in and do that. I have no problem going down there and talking to him about it.
Yeah, I could go with you, I know him.
But we need a plan.
I think curbside pickup that's not gonna happen. Go out throughout the whole community and curbside pickup, that's gonna cost a fortune.
Right.
But collection points, I think, is reasonable. How many, I don't know.
I think that makes sense on a bigger storm. We don't have the staff, we'd have to put everything on hold
Yeah.
to be able to drive around and pick up from
Yeah.
curb. You could contract it out, but there again, it just decides what the council wants to spend on it.
So,
Strike a balance.
Mr. Mayor, seeing as we've already established the budget for this year, we will have a finalized budget in November. We can go down, we can't go up. Perhaps what we do is next budget discussion, we include that as a possible, dollar amount similar to the way Andover does. That just sits there as an allocated dollar amount, and if it's not used, it's not used.
Well, like Tim said, we need a plan first to know,
Yeah,
to be
right.
able to project what it's gonna cost.
Right.
Probability of a storm.
Right.
Well, I think it's something we gotta plan, and we can't just say we're gonna do it and sit on our hands, do nothing.
Exactly.
Storms aren't gonna quit coming.
I'd be willing to join you in visiting with Mike, and
Okay.
if we wanna talk to, neighboring communities, Oak Grove, St. Francis, Ham Lake, what they do. I think you've already checked into that, haven't you? I don't know if it was Aaron or not, or maybe it was you, Nate.
Yeah, we've talked to Ham Lake, Oak Grove, they all kind of do the same thing as us, to clean up the public right of way and the streets and the public property.
And private properties on
Homeowners
your
are
own.
kind of on their own. They're similar to East Bethel in size, acreage lots. It's a little bit different if you're in a small city lot. You can get some big bucks taking down a lot of trees on some of these properties.
Oh, yeah.
Or calling them out, I guess, but.
I can
so like I said,
attest
it's
to
up to the
that.
council to decide.
Nate, would you be able to identify a couple areas in the city for drop points?
I think the two that we talked about would be the only two that we've come up with are Bondi Park and Booster Park. Problem with Booster Park, storms are normally in the summertime, and that park is used a lot for
Yeah.
softball, so that one's not gonna be a great option.
Oh,
If
maybe.
we have a big enough storm, we'll bring all of our resources to bear, we'll have emergency management, we have a plan that we can deal with that, I mean, that'll be a different story. It's these kinda in between size storms where the question's gonna come up, so.
Yeah, maybe take another look at that, reassess if there's any other locations that might, just so that we're doing something and come up with a plan.
Sure.
At least as a starting point, you and I can visit with Mike Rivard, who's gonna have a lot of insights into the actual costs of doing this kind of stuff.
Okay.
So let's start with that and we'll report back on what we find.
Sounds good.
Fair enough?
Okay.
Thanks, Nate.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nate.
Mr. Mayor, the second item on the agenda this evening is Viking Meadows final plat discussion. We have that on the council meeting this evening. We wanted to just bring it to work session here and kind of chat through any issues that may, or questions that may have been raised from the document that was sent out, the developers agreement. And just kind of have a general discussion about it, seeing
And the HOA too.
Yep.
Both of them, right?
all the questions you have on that we can raise and
Okay.
go from there. So we have Matt's here this evening and certainly would be willing to answer questions too, so.
Aaron, you got anything you wanna throw in at the?
No, the city has, between the city engineer, myself, public works director, city attorney, we have been through this, numerous times. We've spent about 3 months on the developers agreement. Capstone has done everything the city engineer has asked of them, up to and including what their plan is to avoid the turtles should they run into any turtles. So I think Capstone has hit every item that we've asked them to do. So.
Well, what do you guys got on your mind?
Is there, I didn't see it, is there some kind of a schedule of time when things are gonna be building, rather than another project we've got going that's been kinda in the works for 3 years?
I don't, there's a loose schedule, I think. Obviously, they need approval from you all before they can even think about breaking ground to start the schedule, so.
Right.
4 or 5 phase, actually, let's have Matt, give a little feedback or
And give us a little
information on
overview.
that, cause he's got an idea of where they're going.
Good to see you again, Matt.
Council members, good to be here. Yeah, I just want to speak to Aaron's comment. I do want to thank your staff. We have been working, we actually submitted this plat back in July and start this conversation, and we've been working over the last now 4 months, July, I guess maybe it's 3 months, somewhere in there, to make sure as we've gone through this, everything is appropriate and correct to what you had approved with the pre-plat. But Aaron, Craig, Nate, Matt, I know you were involved with a couple of our meetings. We've had a lot of engagement with our state and with the county to make sure we went through all the appropriate approvals through them as well. So I thank your staff and everybody that's been involved with this. That was a great help to have the team together for that last big push. And even here within the last several weeks, working with your attorney to make sure that developers agreement met the requirements from the council. So thank you to all of those folks, and thank you to you for entrusting them in the conversations. We hope that what you have in front of you is a representation of what you had asked for us when we brought forward a pre-plat and have that approved earlier this year. So speaking to the question about schedule, yeah, we're anticipating, the hope is with approval tonight. This project is out for bid right now, and our first edition, which is what you have in front of you, our goal is to be able to start actually in January and February of next year. One of the first things we do have to do, as we've talked about before, is that green cleanup. The cleanup of all the greens has to get completed first. And so we want to do that in the winter time when the ground is frozen. That's the best way for us to haul that material to the landfill, the waste landfill. So our goal is to start on that as quick as we can in January, and that'll roll into February. And then our ground break for grading, our goal is to get that started as soon as we're able to this spring. It'll probably be in March because of the conditions of the soil out there, and that'll then roll us right into our development schedule. Usually a project like this would take us about 4 months from ground break to paved roads. And that's been our schedule on all of our projects. We had 6 different projects we developed this year, and the rain slowed us down a little bit, but they all were in that same 4 to 5 month time frame from beginning to end, when you'll have streets paved and we'll all be way on our way with our first couple of homes going up, so.
Okay.
Matt, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I was reading this over on page 81, and starts out at number 8 through 12. I'm just trying to figure out, I see the costs that you have there, and then number 12, it says, the developer shall receive an oversized credit in the amount of $88,315. I'm trying to figure that out. What, an oversized credit?
Absolutely.
What is that about? I
Yeah,
don't know.
I can speak to that. So in the course of our approval or our process of working through the project with the city's engineer, we were asked to take what had been our standard plate for pipe size into the development. And for future development to the south, so I believe that's Osborne's property, and I think that's the only area mainly where we were asked to make the pipe bigger, so oversize it to serve other developments outside of our own. So when there's oversight, or when there's other developments being served outside of our own, there's an oversized credit to us because we're putting in more infrastructure than is necessary for our development, and it is for your future development expansion to the south.
Okay,
That's
so
a good
that's what the
explanation.
oversized credit.
Thanks.
Okay,
Yep, that is the oversized credit, so.
okay, thanks.
So 88,000 today is what millions would be tomorrow.
Millions and-
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
so,
Usually this looks a little bit differently, so I might just speak to how the city of East Bethel manages your SAC and WAC fees. Your storm and water access comes off of the building permit. Sometimes we also see that instead of on the building permit on the development side, so that credit kind of usually offsets itself that way. But in this case, we're paying all those SAC and WAC fees through the building permit, so it's kind of just two different places where you'd see the fee to cover the costs of area charges and a credit that's associated with some of that stuff, so.
I just have another question too, Matt. I'm trying to find the thing, but I can't find it right now, but I was reading and then it says that every 7 days, our engineer is checking what you guys are doing. Is that like common practice?
Yeah,
It is?
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
So I mean, does somebody document that or how does that work?
Yeah, so Craig, city engineer, has an on-site project review person who has a worksheet, and they will either at the request of the developer or on a regular basis run through the checklist to ensure that utilities, ensure that the city streets are being developed within our standard.
Okay, do
And
they
so-
check setbacks and all that stuff too?
Yep.
Looking to
Yep,
make
that'll
sure
all
everything-
be verified
Okay.
when that
So
happens,
our
so.
city engineer does that?
Yep,
Okay.
and there's a section of escrow money set aside that the developer will assure us that that's gonna happen. Should they default, we have that money to continue the project ourselves under the review of the city engineer.
Okay.
Yep, so
Thank you.
that's accounted for 2 times. And then individual lots, when the permits start coming in for each lot, each one of them will get an independent zoning review in my office to ensure that the setbacks also are met before construction will even start.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's it for me.
It's one thing that's really helpful is to have someone with Craig Yoakum's experience with this community.
Yeah.
Definitely very helpful for a project like this. Had one question here. It refers to phase 1, or maybe I'm inserting that. Would you regard everything you've developed now as being for phase 1, and then it says something about treating the other parcels as outlots? Is that also customary?
Yeah, so it's a good question, Mayor. The grading itself, the limits of the grading, the first phase of grading, are much greater than the 40, is it 47 lots?
Yep, 47.
Thank you, I've got
Yep.
too many 40s in my mind right now. 47 lots, is our first addition.
Yeah.
So that's what our streets and utility work are all aimed towards. But our grading actually encompasses most of the north portion of the entire plat, preliminary plat. So that's what we're calling our phase 1 grading. And it actually ends up being almost 150 lots that we're grading.
Oh, okay.
Or, 152 lots, I believe, that we're grading out, and we're grading our ponds, and there's a lot of structure that goes with all of that. That's all a part of this phase 1 construction plan. So, so I don't know where you saw the phase 1, but that's how we're looking at it. Grading phase 1 is all of this area. Our first addition is the 47 lots plus a few outlots. So the outlots that you see in the plat, so there's a bunch of other larger outlots.
Yeah.
Those are either outlots that will be dedicated to the city, that's stormwater treatment plan, ponds, or the park is an outlot. The large open green space, that's one of the fairways. That's park area, that's an outlot that's dedicated. So those are all part of this dedication that we'll do. When we have the approval and we go to record our final plat, we'll be deeding those lots to the city as required through the developer's agreement. So some of those will come to you, some of those will stay with us for our future lots that we're gonna build still.
Mm-hmm.
Those we'll retain, and then when we come for our second edition, replat some of those outlots for that next additional lots, whatever we choose to do as we keep it going.
Okay.
I also
Thank you.
don't
Thank
want to
you.
say it again, but the developer will be putting up escrow money to cover the cost of site grading should they walk away from this project. The city will reserve that money to finish grading the project, as well as if they do get all of the grading done and then decide to not continue, we have the monies to cover erosion control, keeping the sediment from running into the ponds and all that. That will be established before we even issue or hand out the final plat over the counter. Those monies have to be established, or we won't let it go out the door.
Very good, thank you. Other questions, comments?
Just one more, there's 47 lots in that phase 1, correct? When you break ground, how long do you anticipate phase 1 to take?
To build all of those homes. Mm-hmm. Really, market's gonna dictate to that purpose, but we have 2 different products in there that we're starting with. So we're starting with the detached single family that are the smaller 55-foot, and then we're also starting with a 70-foot product. So that's great for us because both products will run basically simultaneously, and we anticipate that helps us with a little bit better sales pace. Mm-hmm. And I don't know exactly what our established sales pace is. When we build these communities, because we're production driven, we set our goal and we meet our goal. And so if we say, for a community like this, we honestly believe, I think that we'll be through all of these 47 within the year. And that we're gonna probably establish a pace that's gonna get through them within that year. So it could be that we're doing 2 a month of each of the product at the same time. So 4 homes a month basically going through this next year. If the market gives us that, we're gonna do it. And that means that you're probably gonna see us here for that second edition next year around the same time. And it may be that we're looking for another 50 lots or even more depending upon what the market's allowing us to do, so.
Who's building the homes?
Capstone Homes.
You guys do have your own?
We're not selling any of the lots, it's all through Capstone Homes,
Okay.
so.
So just a question on curiosity. So you're gonna be developing a golf course that has irrigation in it and other underground needs. Do you have a plan on how you'll be dealing with that? Will you be taking all the irrigation and everything else out?
Yeah, everywhere where there is irrigation, there's cuts and fills to the grading. So most of that is gonna get ripped out and removed. Our actual demo budget is significant because we have that. We have some of those outbuildings that need to come down too. So there's a lot of different things that we'll be pulling out. We have some wells to decommission. So yes, there's a lot of infrastructure in the ground we're aware of that we'll be working through as we go through the project.
Okay, and you'll be removing it as you go.
Yeah, as we go, as we encounter it. I don't think we're gonna chase everything. There's gonna be some areas where it's just gonna stay natural, so there won't be ability for us to go and tear that up looking for irrigation. But everywhere that we're gonna be developing or where there's gonna be any type of infrastructure like that, that'll be removed.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Matt this time?
Well, it sounds like somebody's done their homework.
It's not your first rodeo, is it?
No, I don't like coming up here without being prepared, guys, so that's our goal.
All right, well, thanks, Matt.
Yep, thanks for the few minutes. Look forward to talking later on.
Yep. Facility access policy.
Mr. Mayor, third item on the agenda, wanted to bring this before the council to chat a little bit about a facility access control policy. We had a issue where there was a misuse of some software equipment, and so that kind of brought on the larger question of, well, who has access to some of this, and who has access to facilities, and should they have access? As I started thinking about it, you know, many times, you know, there'll be sensitive information on computers, and people walking by can see that, and that can be a violation of HIPAA or some other, you know, some other thing that could get the city in some deep water, at least in terms of, you know, liability. And so that kind of brought on the whole facility discussion. I sent this document. I checked with Jerry Strike, actually, who was the Andover fire chief. He had a kind of a facility access control policy that they had written up for Andover. And that was sent to everyone via email to kind of look at that, to give you ideas in terms of what you might be looking for this discussion. But, you know, I should say in the beginning, there are city-owned facilities, and there are city-owned facilities that people are under contract with. And, you know, Whispering Aspens is one, the community center. There was discussion about the ice arena and possibility of a business coming in, taking over that and operating that. That would be a city-owned facility that this policy should probably not apply to, but that would be a carve-out to this type of policy. So, but in terms of City Hall, in terms of fire stations, in terms of anything else that we want to include, maybe not the senior center that's attached, but you can identify what facilities you're referring to. And again, somewhat limiting it to employees, current employees, that if there's visitors, that they're accompanied, and making sure that they don't have free access of things in areas they shouldn't go to. I know we don't have a policy as of yet on this, and so I think it's important that we start looking at this and kind of thinking about it, and not that you always need to go to worst case scenario. However, one issue can cost the city significant dollars in terms of releasing the wrong information by accident. So I sent this document to you. And kind of wrote it for the East Bethel Fire Department. This could also apply to City Hall. It could apply to any facilities that you want, so it's not necessarily just the East Bethel Fire Department. But taking that as an example and kind of working through that, we can see how that applies to other facilities as well. And it kind of talks about the responsibility of each member to understand rules and safety, to report any issues that they see, that they know how to operate equipment safely. They comply with state laws, in this case, wearing seat belts whenever driving or riding in city vehicles. That there's an emphasis on maintaining security in the building. If they see a door open, they should probably figure out why it's open and make sure that people aren't going in, that sort of thing. Accidents and injuries, in terms of reporting all the accidents that happen to their superiors. That's an important thing. I think safety here is also very important in terms of, if you see an unsafe situation or practice, it's important to report that. And I think that currently is a practice, but I don't know that that's written down necessarily as of yet. Identification cards, that are used. I know we have them here at City Hall to get access to facilities. So the question is then who gets these identification cards? And I think arguably if you're a current employee, you would have access to that. If you're not a current employee, you probably shouldn't have access to that because you could gain access to a facility in after hours and that wouldn't be appropriate.
It almost seems like this would be something that League of Minnesota Cities, since we have so much insurance with them, that it would be like something covered with an insurance audit. You know, various policies you have in place to control liability for the city. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
do they have, for example, a
whoops.
policy a facsimile of a policy for us to look at? Because they must deal with this at every city that they insure.
You know, I would say they would probably be surprised to learn that we don't have it. Maybe that's a good way to put it.
I would believe that, yeah.
In here, there's talk about weapons. In this particular case, unauthorized possession of dangerous weapons. I was just reading in here. I was talking about unless you have like a concealed carry permit or something of that nature, you'd be authorized at that point. But these are components that can be put in there, can be modified, can be changed. I know at your desk here we have kind of some other summary ideas that could be utilized to go into this as well. And I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we put together a policy that not only in this case, picking on the fire department, would apply to that, but would apply to City Hall, would apply to facilities that should, for example, our facility up there with the water tower probably shouldn't have people messing around inside there, that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
You're dealing with chemicals and things of that nature, high pressure lines and things like that could be dangerous. And so this is something that I think applies across the board for the city, and we should probably wrestle a policy down here and get it on the books so that everyone can kind of understand what our expectations are on it.
So
What's the genesis of this? Has there been an incident that prompted this, or is it just something that one day, bing, I had an idea?
No, we had an instance where there was there used to be a call out for fire calls. There's I forget the prior name of it, but it's currently active 911. There was an instance where somebody released data on that to the public. The public placed it on the Facebook, kind of went around. It became a problem, right? There was no sensitive information in there, although there can be sensitive information in there. In other words, if you're a firefighter and you're being dispatched to a medical, it kind of says what the blood types are and things like that. I mean, this is HIPAA covered. I mean, people just can't have access to this information aside from law enforcement and firefighters,
Right.
Responding first responders. And so in that particular situation, we had kind of a misuse of equipment or technology, which we have a policy for that. So there was a violation of that policy. But then that kind of precipitated this, hold on a second though, what if, you got it on your screen and somebody's walking through, and who do we control walking through? So that's kind of what kind of triggered that question that came up, and the obvious answer was, well, we don't have a policy on that. So.
Well, I guess I'm looking at it from, we'll example the fire department. You got people in the fire department, they get paged out, there's sensitive information. But once you leave that fire department, there shouldn't be access to that any longer, I don't feel.
You have it on your cell phone.
What's that?
You have it on your cell phone.
Well, yeah, but you got the app on your cell phone from somebody at fire. Somehow that, it's just an open invitation. You get somebody that leaves the fire department, maybe they're not a happy camper, they still have this app,
Right.
and then somebody figures out how to hack it. Well, now you got this going on all over the place. When I worked as a medic, when somebody left to do whatever, we had passcode locks, so you didn't have to go through a bunch of changes, you just change your code and then they couldn't get in. But there's gotta be some way to say, okay, you're no longer here, you have no more access to this. Or, I would imagine for an abuse, you could get criminally charged for using it, like in a case where you said, maybe it's not true, maybe it is.
Right, so in that particular situation, if the city knows, like, for example, somebody's retired and still has access to it, if the city knows that and that turns out to be the leak, is the city liable? Well, in our litigious society, I think you become liable and everybody else too.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to avoid a little bit is not only that particular aspect, but also, you know, there's always sensitive employee information on managers' computers and things, you know, in the office. And so if somebody's going through there that's not an employee or shouldn't have access to that, you have a scenario whereby you have some risk.
Have you talked about this at all with Rod? Rod Sano, our fire chief?
We've chatted a little bit about it, and I wanted to bring it to the council here first to kind of get your take on it, if this is something that you want to pursue, in which case then we can start crafting,
Well, I think we need
all the
to.
language.
I think we're all in agreement that we need to, so how do you want to pursue it? How do you want to move it forward?
Okay?
Under the personnel committee or what?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we can bring it to the personnel committee. We can take input from you guys as to, you know, this should be in there, that shouldn't be in there, you know. Kind of compile that and get the consensus on it and then draft a policy and basically hammer it out, you know. I think
Basically, we're just trying to get control of something that has been out of control for quite a while.
Well, and part of it is you've got, you know, I think, again, picking on the fire department, things are less hazardous here in City Hall, but I'm sure there are things that people can get hurt on in the fire department if they have access to it and, you know,
Right.
something falls out of a truck or whatever the case is, someone gets injured, all of a sudden now you're liable for that, so.
What the heck are we got people walking around in the fire department if they don't belong there?
Right.
It's just a matter of managing liability, that's all it's about.
Right.
So,
I'm averse
Okay.
to risk.
I understand, yeah, me too. So we're basically in agreement that we need to address this, so again, how do we specifically move forward?
Well, we've got,
How would you see us doing it?
we've got 15 minutes here. We can talk about this document if you want, kind of strike what you don't like, or if you want to go through that. Otherwise, if you want to take more time reviewing the sheet I gave you at your desk, you know, you can kind of mold the two together and come up with.
Well, what do you guys think?
Why don't we take it, who's all on the personnel committee?
Question.
I think I am.
I think you and me,
Well, let's
my recollection.
Mine as well.
get together somewhat soon and
Yeah.
just hammer out a few things and send it out to
The group,
say, well, what do you
via
think?
Matt, we'll send it out to the group and
Okay.
get feedback.
I do have a
Sure.
question on the 911
Sure.
app. Don't you have to give the department your cell phone number to turn it on? Because you just can't get that app anywhere, can you?
No, you will only the authorized personnel have access to that app.
And can they shut down that app too with the numbers?
Sure. Yes.
Well,
Do
that
we
would- that would
pay
solve
on the number of
problem.
users?
Yes.
We pay by the number of users,
I believe it's by the number of users.
okay.
So the ones that are no longer involved with the fire department, then we should just shut them off.
Well, I know the current policy right now is retirees have access to it, and I'm sorry, the other, what's that called?
Auxiliary?
Auxiliary have access, I believe, to it. So the question is, should they? And
Okay,
Why would the auxiliary have it?
Right away.
I might be wrong on that, but
I would verify with the fire chief who,
Well,
still-
I'm
who
just
maintains access.
not
I think he's got an
Making
administrative account.
accusations,
where-
I'm just.
I know
why
the
would they?
auxiliary have access to the facility. That may be the
That should be changed too if that's the
crossing of
case.
wires, but,
okay.
so.
Interesting.
But it'd be
Right.
very similar, Mr. Mayor, to a prior mayor walking through the facility here. It's probably not appropriate that that would happen.
No, it's,
Whereas you guys do have access to it. So same sort of idea.
okay, so you wanna just call a meeting of the personnel committee and next week
Okay?
Do you
sometime?
know who's on that? It's
Yep.
not-
I'll email you to
And we'll
confirm
try
who's on it.
to
Yep.
hammer out an initial draft and send it out to everybody and get some feedback.
Do you think in the meantime, we should put some sort of a pause into effect? Keeping unauthorized personnel up there when they're not supposed to be up there?
Our legal team just walked in, should we ask him?
I think that'd be a good
Eric.
idea, actually.
I think we need a little legal advice. Need? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand for something. Yeah, he's probably hanging his coat and stuff.
I think the practice has just been what the practice is. So the question is do you want to put a pause on that until this policy is established and completed? In which case, then it would be whatever the policy is moving forward. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, cause I think we should probably change access codes effective immediately and not giving out to any fire personnel that's not active at this time. That's my suggestion.
I don't know, I've never had it, I guess I don't have any use for it. Myself, unless somebody else wants it. I mean, if it's that critical of an emergency, we're all gonna know about it anyway. Just through emergency management protocol.
Okay.
Is that the will of the council then to change the codes at this point and
And shut
Just
off
to-
anybody who's not active duty. Anybody who's not active duty, that's,
Oh, there he is. There's one out looking for you.
okay? All right.
I mean, I'm just speaking for myself.
I just have one thought. I know Alina likes to bring their rig in there, and the sheriff's office uses that as a downtime or a lunch break station. So I just want you to make sure that your policy is encompassing enough that all emergency responders that work our
Oh, yeah.
community
Right.
can still have
Right.
access. I don't want you to
Right.
exclude
We're just
non,
basically talking
yeah.
about non-members.
right,
So, yeah, we
Or
understand that.
unauthorized people.
correct.
Non-active
I
duty.
just wanted to point that out.
Right,
and-
no.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, there's nothing else. Motion to adjourn?
We have one more thing on there?
Adjourn.
Oh,
Adjourn, or-
No, just
second.
Okay, a motion's been made and seconded to adjourn our work meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none heard. By the way, Matt, I'm gonna try to start, and help me remember